Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Science of Sound. I am full of joy today to be having a conversation with an incredible woman, Grammy Award-winning singer and songwriter whose music has touched lives all around the world with her intentions of love and peace, joy, and healing. I am honored to welcome India Arie. Welcome, India.
Thank you. You're an incredible woman as well, who is
Oof.
spreading music, who's spreading love, healing, peace, and joy through music and sound as well. So it's my pleasure to be with a kindred spirit. I don't get to talk about, I don't know exactly where we're going to go today. But I don't get to have these kind of conversations almost ever. I get to talk about my music, but it's not the places we're going to get to go. So it's a pleasure to be with you too.
Oh, I have goosebumps just to feel you. There's such a richness, an elegance, um,
Oh, thank you.
truth, and authenticity, and
Thank you.
we need this now. If we talk about India, the relevance of music at this time, at this time where so much is breaking open, and I know both of us had a deep connection to the Anais Nin quote, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom.
Mm-hmm.
And you are a model of heart and authenticity. How do you find that people can access sacred space and sacred vibrations, and what is the relevance of music to that?
Hmm. I knew you were going to ask me questions no one has ever asked me. Things I think about though. Um, when I think about sacred space, I think about truth. To me, a person's sacred space is what is most true and what is most revered by them, by them. And so for a lot of people, nature is a sacred space, or a certain place at the beach, or their grandmother's house, or a room at their grandmother's house, or um, their prayer space, or hiking. To me, sacred space means what is most true to you and what is most revered by you. So sacred space is church for a lot of people, or places of worship. And I have two answers to what music has to do with that. For I don't know if I've ever really put this into words, but as you know, music has a way of just of reaching the subtle bodies. And so when you're in uh, a place of deep truth, and you also have that other sound element administering to you as well, I feel like it heightens the spiritual experience or calms the nerves, and in that heightening everything, all the ways that it can really affect a being. Also, for me, music is a sacred space. So when we talk about what is most true and what is most revered by someone being a sacred space, music for me is one of the things that I revere and love most in the world. And it's a place that I go that is where my truth is heard and expressed. And then also, I think for more sensitive people, you hear music everywhere. That's why we love to hear the chirping of the birds. It's a beautiful music. And I feel like the way that sound is inextricably linked to our whole life, that right there, how do you say this? Speaks volumes to what it means, the importance of sound to the experience of life overall. And of course, the importance of sound to the experience of a sacred moment. A lot of people go to church for the music. And I think that there is also something important about the fact that every religion has a musical element. Like you need those chants or those songs to complete the experience. You have to have the sound too, and the administering to the subtle body. And I also personally love, because I have a prayer and meditation practice but also there's something that is immediately prayerful and immediately meditative about the songs that speak to you. Like it can just take you right to that place, right to that place. You put it on, it takes you right to that place. It's like a shortcut to that place of sacredness. And so, I mean, all of that I said is also outside of my love for writing songs and my love for just exploring the music of the world and American music and all that. We didn't even get into that, but if you ask me what the role of music is in a sacred space, I think that it's inextricably linked to that which is sacred.
And what it reminds me, what we really say, that in the beginning was the word, in the beginning was sound, and in that sound is everything. I know when you were speaking also, I was thinking we've talked with Victor Wooten and with Krishna Das about simply the song Amazing Grace.
Mm-hmm.
What that song elicits for people all around the world. It's beyond a religion. There's something about that tune and that sense of coming home.
I have to I have to be transparent because that's just where I am in my life.
Hmm.
And I also have something that I have to tell you that I never get to have these conversations. So
Hmm.
I love the idea of being able to say this again. Um, there's a history of the song Amazing Grace connected to slavery. And so when I think of it, it is a song that I have been able to fellowship with people over. Like it'll be like a singer you don't know at all. Let's sing harmony. Let's sing Amazing Grace because we know it.
Right.
It's not one of those songs for me that is like, ooh, my sacred space songs at all. But I hear you. But I feel that way about some Bob Marley songs. And we know why. Like there's just, you hear them and you're like, that's the music of the world. We don't think of it as Jamaican music. We think of it as world music. But also, there's a song for me that is, I feel like it's completely unexpected and it surprises me every time. Because there's a thing that happens for me when I sing a cappella and nobody's around, like I'm just singing to myself in the kitchen or something. And like, I guess singers always sing. And so, I'm always maybe humming something or singing or something like that. But the moments when I really sing a song to myself, like I really sing a whole song, it always makes me emotional to do that with no music. I don't know why. I just get choked up to sing a cappella when no one's around every time. I don't know why. And there's one song in particular that literally 100% of the time when I sing it to myself, I cry. And it is Sweet Baby James by James Taylor. I do not know why. There must be something about the melancholy of the melody, but James Taylor's voice has also brought me comfort my whole life. He's one of my favorite songwriters and musicians. I've been able to meet him a few times, and he's a sweet, sweet, sweet soul. And so there's just something about that song. I could just literally, even now, just thinking about singing it, there is a young cowboy, it just made me tear up. There's just something about that song for me.
And so if
I
we
never had told anybody that.
That's amazing. And so if we go in that space of what music means to each of us, again, what is the relevance? And for me, that song too, there's such a purity, a sweetness, an
Purity.
innocence that takes us back to that place of childlike joy and wonder where you feel sacred, where you feel pure, where you
That's
feel
right.
connected to source, whatever
It
that.
is a lullaby, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, I love a lot of songs in this world, but that one,
India, when did you first recognize that sound and music were powerful and they had a healing, a transformational energy to them? Was there a particular time in your life that you recognized that?
I always felt music very deeply. The first time I ever was taught what a minor note was was from my mother. And we were in the car. It must have been the mid 80s, maybe like 87. And I was probably 10 or 11 in 87. And Donny Hathaway's version of A Song for You was on the radio. And he ends the song with this note, ooh. And it made me feel the way my mom said the reason why it's making you feel like that is because it's a minor note. And she said, and a lot of songs don't end in minor notes like that. And then he sings it with no music. She was explaining to me, and I was like, oh, but also Donny Hathaway's voice and how it speaks to me and everything. To me, he has one of the greatest voices I've ever heard, his voice tone alone. And so, but back then at 11 or 12 or 10 or whatever I was, I wouldn't call it healing. Forgive my phone, keeps going off. Hopefully I fixed that. Uh-oh, did I lose you? Okay, I'm here. So I don't know if I definitely would not have used the language healing at, that age. But Stevie Wonder is also one of my musical heroes. And when I started making my own albums, I wanted to make music that made people feel the way his music made me feel. I didn't want to sound like him. I wanted to make music that made people feel the way his music made me feel. I didn't ever think I could sound like him. It was not even why would I think that? And I still wouldn't have called that healing until I released my first album. I had a crazy year in the music industry that I did not like at all. And I went to the Grammys. I had this horrible experience with the Grammys and the politics, and I started learning how the music industry is with the politics and stuff. And I decided to create a mission statement because it was like, I didn't ask for any of this. And then y'all dangle it in front of me and snatch it away. And you make me feel like I lost something that I didn't even want. And so I created a mission statement. And the mission statement was to create love, healing, peace, and joy through the power of words and music. And that's the first time that I really started thinking about music as a healing energy, because I had my first album out and people were telling me how my music made them feel. They wouldn't say it's healing me. They would say, you made me think about my body in a new way. Or my mother lost all her hair and your song is our jam. And so I'm like, oh, that's how Stevie Wonder made people feel. He made you think about things, and you jammed, but you also thought about things, and it was a part of your life. When you heard Isn't She Lovely, you thought about your daughter or, your child. And so when I wrote that mission statement, love, healing, peace, and joy, that's when I really understood that healing was that word. And that's when I really understood that it wasn't just a naive ideal, that it was something that you could actually do. And it became my mission to continue to do. Luckily, it's my nature too. It wasn't like, how am I going to get these songs together? It was like, what it would help me, having that mission statement, and specifically about healing, what it would help me do is be more honest with myself, because you never know what people want to hear. All I know is what I need, and what words will and frequencies will administer to me. That's all I know. What gives me chills, what makes me feel like lit up. That's all I know. And so in the times when I would feel like there were energies on me that would make me second guess something I was doing, or how I hope people like this, and thinking about stuff like that, because talk about sacred space, songwriting for me is a completely sacred space. And so when foreign thoughts and other people's energies and stuff come in and have me thinking how to make a hit, how to talk to people, I would always be able to brush that away, because I wanted to focus and be able to get to my truth, because I know if I got to my truth, that it would get to other people's truth. And so the healing power of music has been important for me to help me just to be my most authentic expression. Because there are a lot of reasons to pretend to be something you're not when there's money on the table. It's easy to do. I've left a lot of things on the table. I'm like, it doesn't line up with me. A lot of things. My mother has told me I'm crazy. Just do it. I'm like, no, it doesn't line up with me. And so I'm proud of, anybody, how do I say this? I think we should all want to be a person that we're pleased to be. But, and in that, what I'm saying is that the music industry can be very harmful to a person's sense of self. And And in opposition to that, the music industry actually has challenged me to learn how to be my most authentic self. And so it's been a lot of ups and downs, and I'm grateful for the wisdom.
It's so beautiful to have this conversation because I think we can look so much on the outside and say, wow, they have this and they have that and they must be really happy and they, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like we all have struggles with the same issues of self-worth, of self-love. And even though those things on the outside might fill us for a piece of time, they're not lasting. And I think what is so interesting to me about this conversation and about music is what is it that grounds us? What is it that becomes unshakable, India? What becomes, and it's more than our parents. Our parents, I think, gave us both really good values and integrity and et cetera. But then they had their things like your mom going, why not? And it's like, no, I need to root deeper into what's the truth. You're shaking your
What
head.
grounds us? What grounds us? That's the perfect question. What grounds you?
Yeah.
Because and my first album came out when I was 25, and so I was doing all the um, learning about how the world is stuff and awakening and the death of my naivete over those years. But also, I was doing my own personal growth and stuff that happens in your family and stuff too. And so it was like realizing at a certain point there is a certain type of growth that your parents can't do for you. And it's not even that they can't do for you, you necessarily have to do it outside of them. And so that quote, the risk, and then the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud was greater than the risk it took to blossom. That quote came into my life at that time because it was like I had to go against. I'm so sorry for this sound. Can you hear that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. And I have it on mute and I don't know why it won't stop making noise. Really sorry about that.
It's okay.
I had to go not only deep, I had to go against my mother's wishes to get to that place where I could blossom. And that was hard to do. My mother, because she's a very strong personality, but also she taught me everything I know about music. And I was walking in her footsteps, literally, because I was on Motown Records for 17 years. And my mother was from Detroit, Lansing, Michigan. My father's from Detroit when Motown was new. And so they wanted to sign my mother as a teenager. And so for me to end up at Motown, we know the cycles of life are real. They're real. And you have a chance to make better decisions than your parents. It's what the spiritual evolution is all about. And so we were always like partners on the journey. My mother makes all my stage gowns. We've written songs together. She's always there. Like, not even she has a stage mom element sometimes, but she wasn't like a stage mom. I made music because I wanted to. And I was inspired by her to make music, not pushed by her. But then when that day came, when the risk to remain tight in the bud was greater than the risk it took to blossom, I had to go directly against her and put myself in a new place and put her in a new place in my life. And so that you said the word vulnerability before we started
Oh,
taping.
yeah. Yeah. How does vulnerability serve our strength? But right
Mm,
there for a moment, like when we're able to be the truth of who we are and we can break out of, the tightness of the bud, you create something that, once again, is completely stabilizing for your own system. And I think our fear is that we're going to disappoint our parents or we're going to hurt someone. But the truth is, what I've come to see with my mom now, too, is that there's such a closeness now, the more that I am my authentic self and the more that
yeah,
I don't follow exactly in what she would do, right? And
yeah.
that vulnerability, like, how does your vulnerability serve your strength? Because you're a walking example of that. And one feels this, it's this regalness. It's this, nothing's
Thank you.
gonna shake me off my truth, you know, and it may
Thank
be a
you.
little wobbly for a little bit, you know, but there's a feeling of a queen, of a real leader, India, which is,
Thank you.
you know, we need that.
Thank you. Um, Vulnerability serves my strength by being willing to, I don't, it's funny. I'm hearing my brother in my head because he always says things to me like, Indy, my family calls me Indy. He's like, Indy, you just go for it. Like, you just jump out and do stuff and tell people no, and you say yes, and you try things. And I tell him all the time, it doesn't feel like I'm willing. It feels like I have to. There's, and so my my vulnerability, my willingness to confront myself and to be afraid of things and still do it anyway, my willingness to what's the word? To be introspective and to like look at myself and be willing to hear hard things about myself from other people and tell them, no, I will not, I swear I will not feel the way you can tell me anything. Even business partners or good friends, like, because for me, that willingness to be vulnerable and open in that way is how you grow. And growth is how you continue to evolve. How do you digest your experiences and become the next version of yourself if you don't take the time to digest the experiences? How do you continue to grow into, there's a different word I'm thinking of other than grow, but like to that
Evolve.
next cycle of life. I want to say evolve too, but you know, like just how do you evolve into that next cycle of your life if you're not willing to be broken open first? You know, there's that, like you said, there's that moment where it's shaky and like, you know, like they say the butterfly is mush in the cocoon. You have to be willing to be mush. And then you come out and somebody says, you look regal. And like, oh, I do? Because it's interesting to be reflected back to you, what you've grown into by the work you've been willing to do. And I've had an interesting experience, again, going back to my music industry journey. I have photographs of myself from every era of my life for the last 20 years. So I can see when my eyes were vacant. I can see when I wouldn't move my mouth when I would talk. I can see how I would hold my head down or when I was afraid on stage. And I watched, you know, I saw the middle era where I was depressed. I was going through bouts of depression and I had like a fire in my eye, but I would still show up to things, you know, and I still felt like kind of combative. And now when I see myself on screen, I see a person who is comfortable with herself and willing to say whatever she has to say. I've learned how to say even hard things with the hint of a smile because, you know, wisdom and the willingness to be mush for a minute there. I feel myself actually going into another mushy phase because music is all I've ever done. And I'm now, my life is naturally calling me to other things, but I don't know what the things are yet. And so not knowing is that mushy cocoon phase, but I have landed on my wings every other time. And so I know that I can do this. It feels like a really big leap, but I'm willing.
It's like, you know, the questions. It's living into those questions and not turning back. It's like just one step at a time, one step at a time.
You
And
can't ignore your own life.
no, when I watched your crazy and sacred space,
Yes.
oh my gosh, like they are so revealing and so intimate. There's something, I just had goosebumps. They're really so authentic and so revealing, so intimate, so personal, and yet so universal for all of us. It's,
Thank you.
you know, what is sacred? What is love? What is authentic?
Thank you.
Your journey, and I know that's the first thing that you wrote, directed, everything, right? Produced.
Yeah. Well, so it's like you said, two songs, Crazy and Sacred Space. I ended up being the editor um, because for a lot of reasons, the director of the video wasn't sensitive to my vision, and so she sent me an edit, and I realized that she didn't see what I saw, and I just took over. I've never edited anything, And I also ended up co-directing by default. And so it was the first thing I've ever done in that way. And by combining the videos into one narrative, I ended up, for PR reasons, because it became a 9 minute and 36-second short film. And for PR reasons, I had to give it a name. Because I was like, so we're going to release this short film. And everybody kept saying, sure, we'll put it on our site. What's it called? And I was like, I had to come up with a name. And Reverend Michael Beckwith appears in the short film. And at the end, because what the short film is about a woman on a journey who learns that even through all her relationships and her, she has a dream, that she goes into a dream and another man is in there. And I don't want to give it all away, but even throughout her journey and her relationships and her questioning, that in the end, no one completes you. You complete you, and you always come home to yourself. And so at the end, Reverend Michael says, and welcome home, and from here you shall not move. And so I named the short film Welcome Home. And so I've never done anything like that, never edited, never directed, I edited Reverend Michael's spoken word pieces. I did the color and all this stuff. And so it's funny too, because we know how life works. Like there's always that physical element and then the spiritual one. This starts in the spiritual realm first. And I, because of who I'm growing into, really wanted to make a visual that captured me, not what I do in the world or my message or my image. I wanted it to be like you're watching me do the things I do. And so that's why I never thought I would ever be in meditation on camera, but I was in meditation. I mean, I was also filming, but while they were setting up the camera, I was sitting on my cushion, and then they would do the takes and I would be on my cushion. And we were in that setup for 3 hours. So I was like, this is the best video shoot I've ever done. Like I'm actually me, and we were outside and the wind was blowing and I had on like a silk thing that I would wear at home. And I think in that intention, to capture my real self, doing yoga and all the stuff I do, that spirit was like, well, you want to capture your real self, you're going to have to put your hand in this technical element too, because she didn't understand the angles of my face or how to make the skin color right or how to make the men's skin color look right and the editing and stuff. The director didn't understand. And so I kept reminding myself, I said I wanted it to be me. So I was like working, and it took a good 300 hours. It was like 10 seconds every 10 hours. It was so much work, but in the end, I honor the journey, and I realized it's what I asked for. I realized it's what I asked for. So I learned a lot, had the opportunity to learn a lot.
You're so free in that. Like it feels like one is just watching you in your most free, private, intimate moments. And
When my
it's,
best friend, who also helps manage my career, we've been friends over 25 years, when she said that, I was like, I did it. She said, it looks like you. That looks like you at home. I was like, I did it. She said, you got your hair out? And I was like, okay.
and so if we go back to this whole question about vulnerability being our strength, and really recognizing that just to show up and to show up in the truth of who you are in that moment, that's your strength, and that music has a way to hold us in there that just, whether you're making the music or listening to the music. Um,
Oh, that's interesting that you said that.
hmm.
When you said the word vulnerable, when you first asked the question, for me, when I think about the word vulnerability, I think about an overall openness to life. And just now, as you defined it as showing up as your full self in a moment, that is what I do anytime I'm in a public space, and increasingly so. Because in the music industry, your unspoken job description is to make everyone like you, right? Which is impossible.
Impossible task.
And that's why you see a lot of people fall apart. All down the decades, you see people fall apart, you see people fall apart because they're trying. And just increasingly over the years, I would just shake off a layer of that and be like, I don't like this. And then I don't like this. And then 2009, I had a big turning point where I retired and was just like, I'm done. If this is how it's going to be and how they're going to act, I'm out. I moved to a whole different state, started living a different life, just living my life. And I realized that it wasn't that I didn't want to make music anymore, is that I wanted to be able to do it and be myself. And so now where I am 10 years after that breakthrough moment, now where I am is learning that I don't always have to show up daytime TV ready. Like I don't have to be perky. I don't have to smile. I don't have to mince words. I don't have to hold back things I want to say, or I don't have to be pleasing. I can show up and be vulnerable. It's a heavy day. I'm having a heavy moment, or, then I can be who I want to be. And I'm learning that this quarantine has been really helpful for that too, because there are a lot of things I'm doing on camera that I wouldn't do. I would do a lot of phone interviews, or I'd be in person. When you're in person, you want to be nice to people and they love your music and hi, and you want to be nice to everyone and because they're there with you. They spent their time and got in the car and came to you. So you want to honor that. The quarantine, because all these Zoom conversations and meetings is giving me a time to just be like, I'm going to put on my white dress again. And I'm going to sit at my table where all my favorite stuff is and talk and like be me. There is such a strength in it. And I'm having a really great time practicing it. Forgive me for cutting you off with that. You really took me to a place when you defined it that way. I'm really having a great time practicing being me.
I mean, what struck me watching the video was such a sense of power. It was like, whoa, we are in the presence of real, grounded, feminine, but human power, just light. And there was something like when you look at a most beautiful piece of art, or you listen to a most beautiful piece of music, whatever it is, I had that feeling watching it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a funny story? There are two leading men. One's name was Lyric Bent. The other man's name is Mustafa Shakir. And so Mustafa was the man in the Sacred Space video, the bald head man. And he's a wonderful astrologer. Who knew? Who knew? I didn't know him at all. I saw him and was like really taken with his energy, because I wanted someone with an interesting vibration, not just an interesting look.
And his
And
eyes.
so, yeah, his eyes and his everything. He's just gorgeous. And so he turned out to be an amazing astrologer, among other things. And we were on set, like between takes, and we were talking about my chart, because he knew my chart very well, because he's an astrologer. And we were talking about something in my chart that speaks about the power that I carry when I walk into a room. And he said, so what's your favorite part of your chart? And I said, that part is the sun conjunct Pluto in the 11th house at 9 degrees. And so like the 9 energy and the sun and the Pluto and all this stuff is like a strong thing. And I told him that's my favorite thing. And he started laughing. He went, ha, 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 ha. If you say anything else, I was going to be surprised. He said, you're like walking plutonium. You have so much energy and light when you walk into a room. He said, do you know? And I said, I mean, I don't ever see myself. I don't think I'm supposed to know, but I'm fascinated by that part of my chart. And he said, well, as an astrologer, I'm telling you, like he laughed so hard. It just made me think, that's cool that someone sees me that way. I don't know, but my mother has something like that. My grandmother, theirs did too. So if I'm anything like them, then I'm honored to be growing into that type of woman.
But the joy of it is that's just when you're embodying that, it feeds you, it nurtures you, it's just
Yes.
you, and you find that you have more and more and more
Yes.
to be that. And so it's just you, but it's so nourishing, nurturing, and it just expands like this. If we talk about for a moment bioenergetics and the toric field, it's just like we really are this energy churning machine that just is
That's right.
constantly renewing and constantly expanding. And when you get out of that state of, smallness or victim or however we want to name it, and hook into that, which is for me personally what music often does for me, boy, the possibilities they're limitless.
I had never thought of that visual of the victim stuff being hitches in this movement. I had never thought of the visual that way, but it blocks you from being able to rejuvenate yourself. That's right. I get that.
India, what kind of things might you share with the viewers, that maybe personal practices or things that people, because it is a really important time that we're going through right now. And a lot's breaking open and things that needed to be spoken into are being spoken into. And there's just so much that's moving. And it feels like it's been very painful. And it feels like it's moving to something bigger and better than perhaps we could have imagined. And high time. What might you say to people about this time and about daily practices that they could integrate?
I mean, I'm going to just say it again because it's here to stay.
Yeah.
I feel like it's that Anna's Nin quote is wonderful to ponder, because that's really what we're doing on a mass scale. And then the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was greater than the risk it took to blossom. And I think those are wonderful words to ponder, not just on a personal level, but on a mass scale, and looking at what humanity is going through right now. And I think that, I feel like I'm giving just what I feel is the basic truth. The closer relationship you have with yourself, I think, what's the word? I think the closer relationship you have with yourself, the more access you have to your well-being. And what I mean by that is there are certain things that no one and nothing can tell you. You have to be able to get quiet and close your eyes and go into yourself and feel the truth. And since life is calling us to ask all of these questions now, and to look at life in a different way, and to be more vulnerable around questions of race and gender and all these questions, even around the vulnerability around questions of health and healthcare, and what we do when people are, what we do with the energy of mass fear, like all these questions that life is asking us. There's always our teachers and people we love to talk to and things like that. But in my opinion, the most important place to go for those real insights are inside of you. And so I think the closer relationship you have with yourself, the more access you have to your well-being. And I think that closeness with yourself comes from meditation and prayer. I think it does. But I don't mean those things in any of the ways that someone would put the boxes they would put them in. Meditation is a lot of things, and prayer is too. And so, I feel like anybody watching this would have a prayer meditation type practice. But if we were talking to a complete lay person who was completely new to those words at all, like when we hear people talk about stillness. But the truth is, stillness doesn't always mean sitting still. Stillness is an internal posture that you cultivate. And so you might find your stillness walking with your dog. You might find your stillness in hiking. You might find your stillness in beautiful pieces of people. You might find beautiful pieces of music, I was going to say. You might find your stillness in solitary movement. Like say you're a dancer who's with a troupe, but your sacred space comes when you dance at home alone to your favorite music. Or there's lots of ways to access that internal posture of stillness, a lot of ways. And I feel like that, again, is why you want to build a relationship with yourself, because you want to be able to ask yourself, what is my sacred space? What does my internal space of stillness feel like? And when I talk about prayer, my grandmother would say, meditation is listening to God. Meditation is listening to God. Prayer is talking to God. And so when I talk about prayer, to me, it doesn't just live inside of religion. It lives in, like, when we talk about words of affirmation or speaking words of power to yourself, writing important words to yourself on paper or journaling. For me, all that stuff is prayer. But you have to be willing to sit with yourself. That's what all of it is about, is being willing to sit with yourself. Prayer and meditation both is sitting with yourself and pushing through that the initial pain you feel when you first start sitting with yourself. You know, because all the stuff comes up and you might cry or feel pain about your childhood or stuff that you were able to cover up by all of your movement. And so now that movement is slower and less and smaller now. I think it is, again, like a spiritual calling to get still and smaller and quiet with yourself. And what I have found, I tell this to all the young people that I can, what I have found is that very first time in 2000, it's probably around 2006, when I really just stood up for myself. And I was on tour, my back started hurting, my voice went out, and I was supposed to leave straight from a whole other tour to Europe for this tour. And I just told everyone, I just stopped the whole machine. Like, I can't go. And it was fine. There was like a moment, and people were trying to scare me, and they're gonna ask for their money back and all this stuff. And then a week later, it was all quiet. Nobody did anything to me. I got the rest I needed. And that first time of taking that leap past fear, it taught me that I can always take the leap and that will be okay. Like I said a moment ago, I always land with my wings. And so I feel like if you're asking me my opinion of what to tell people what to do during this time, I feel like it's getting still, getting quiet, and being willing to hear what yourself is saying to yourself about anywhere that it's time to take a leap, because everything is changing and you are too. And I feel like we're all being called to take these leaps that look really scary, still probably look scary. Like I was talking about my own leap. I don't know what's happening next, but I've trained myself to be able to take those leaps. And I think that it's time for people to have the closest relationship they can have with themselves, so they can start asking the hard questions and becoming who they need to be for what the world needs. That was a long answer. Those are the things I think.
It's
We
great.
have to become who we need to be for what the world needs.
When you
But I'm
have,
preaching to the choir on that one. I'm preaching to the choir on that one.
well, when you have moments, because I find like I'll have moments where I'm just very self-critical, and it's like, you know, calm it down, just calm it
Do I know? Yeah.
down. And it's so interesting because that critical voice actually doesn't have much to do with who you really are. What do you do when that critical voice
Man.
comes in and it's loud? Because that's part of the whole thing of nurturing ourselves, of the self-love, of building a place of stillness
Yeah.
where you hear the true vibration of your soul. You heard, can't do the tour now. Just can't do it. Don't try to figure it out. When the critical voice could come in and just beat you for it, but yet you knew what you had to listen to. What do you do in general when that happens with you?
I'm laughing because I feel like that has been what this whole music industry journey has been about. And I also feel like no matter what line of work I chose, that was going to come up.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't know if I fully believe this, but I'm going to say it now because it's how I feel in the moment. I don't know. But how I feel in this moment is that right there is life. How you close out the outside voices and hear your truth. Like that's like, to me, is like life, living. And I feel like, I don't know that I have advice for anyone on that, but what I want to say is that I have cultivated my spiritual life and my spiritual practices because of that question. That's it. It wasn't like, it would be good to meditate. It will be good to have a prayer practice. It'll be good to have a contemplative practice and write songs. It wasn't like, it'll be good. It was like, how do I save myself? How do I heal myself? How do I how do I remember who I am when somebody else is saying Black women aren't something, or the boxes they put people in and the ways that we treat each other as human beings. I my spiritual practices have been cultivated to administer to my healing because of that question. And so what I started saying to myself is my healing is my hobby. My wellness is my hobby. Because, you know, there are certain things, again, that no one can do for you. And so everything I do is towards that closer relationship with myself and closing out the world. And I think people who know my music very well would say that is the number one theme of my actual lyrical content, is about knowing yourself more, loving yourself deeper, loving yourself through loving other people, being able to silence out the voices, the equality of all people, all those things. Because again, to me, like that question you asked is what life challenges us with. And so I guess kind of say everything I do, even that I wear a lot of white, even that, because I come from an African tradition where white is known to just be protective of the aura. And so because I'm around a lot of people, and even when I'm not around a lot of people, my energy is with a lot of people, I wear a lot of white because it calms my nervous system and it keeps me with me instead of me having a lot of other things with me too. And so, good question. And everything I do is the answer. I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's why I have a spiritual practice.
It's so great to explore these things with you. I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
in the conversation with Krishna Das, he said he sang and he began singing his chants because he had to. To quote him, he said to save his ass. You know, he had to go in there. And I'm curious for you, in addition to what we've just spoken about, like when you have those places of just a critical voice or um, how does your creative process, because your creative process is it's so powerful. How does that support that?
First of all, I have to say I love Krishna Das. His voice has brought me comfort for many hours at a time.
Mhm.
And I watched his documentary. And so I know exactly what he's talking about. My journey was a lot less tumultuous than his, but I know what he's talking about. And there was a part in his documentary that I really identify with. It was when he was talking about who's the big producer with the long beard, the owner of Def Jam Records, along with Russell Simmons.
Um,
His name is just
Me too. Sorry.
Rick Owen.
Okay.
Not Rick Owens, him. He was talking about the era when Rick, what's his name, forgive me, produced that album for him. And they showed him making a music video where he was like dressed in a costume and doing these things and looking like an Indian yogi in the video. And I kept rewinding that part because I know what it looks like when somebody's not able to be themselves. And you know, the Krishna Das we know like wears his flannel shirts and is very straightforward and it's like, mm. And so seeing him in that video when he had like eyeliner on and hair extensions and stuff, it was like, I know that feeling when somebody's trying to make you be a fake version of you. And I had to say that because I know, and then he talked about, he said I didn't like it. He said I just didn't like it and I stopped in the documentary. And I recognized, I knew exactly what he was talking about because, to answer your question, when you when music is your sacred space and you truly have reverence for it, it calls you to places, it calls you to where you're supposed to go. And I feel blessed that I have something that I love and am connected to and revere as much as I do, the act of making music, because it has shaped my character.
Mhm.
It's helped me to say no when it's hard and say yes when it's hard and speak up when it's hard and say stop when I never could say stop. And so that's the role that music plays for me. I feel like it's a lot of, I don't have children, but it's what I understand people feel about their children. makes you just want to be better because it's something you care that much about. And so that's what music is for me. I'm just seeing that scene in Krishna Das's documentary. I just kept rewinding that part because I was like, I know what he's talking about right here.
Will you talk for a moment about your creation of the song "I Am Light"?
Oh, um,
An anthem.
thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Again, that was a deep willingness to listen because when I was hearing the words "I am light," my brain was like, "That's corny." I'm not going to say "I am light," but that part of me that knows how to shut that stuff out was like, "This is what I hear. This is what I hear. This is what we're doing." And you write songs one word at a time. So I just wrote song one word at a time, and it was on 12/21/12, that day everyone was anticipating. So I thought, let me use the energy some kind of way. And I always pray for my songs, and I say, I just pray for what I want them to mean and be. I pray intentions into them, and I prayed a big intention into "I am light." I don't remember the words. I just remember feeling like I wanted to write something that would really speak to anyone who had real pain, or to teach people what it feels. Not teach, to accompany people in the process of um, learning what it's like to be human and all of our stuff that we go through and the ups and downs and that kind of thing. Like, to me, that's a big prayer because that's a big ask. That's a big journey we're all on. And so I wrote the song one word at a time. I finished it in one day, which I don't always do. And when I start listening back to it, I liked it in a different way than I like some of my other songs. It was almost like liking it as a listener, not as the creator of it. And so even to this day, "I Am Light" is the only song of mine that I listen to regularly. I have songs that I haven't heard the recordings of in years. I'll be somewhere and hear a song and I'll stop and listen, like, with curiosity, like, okay, oh, that's what we did. Oh my God, the fade out is long. I mean, it's like, a lot of curiosity about my recordings and stuff because I don't listen to my music at all. I listen to "I Am Light" a lot, like every day, a lot. Um, because for me, it is my prayer, and it's a song that's taken me so many places and opened up different doors spiritually, or to spiritual communities. It's opened up doors to my truth. When we keep talking about the Anais Nin quote, and you heard me say it when I got to do Super Soul Sessions with Oprah. And I was invited to do that and Super Soul Sunday with Oprah because of the song "I Am Light." Sherry Salata read these essays I wrote around the song and invited me to do Super Soul Sessions. She said, "I know you have a story to tell." And I was like, "Oh, I tell stories. I got stories." So I wrote my speech and did my thing. And but a lot of I would say that song ushered me into a new phase of who I have become since 2012. And like I said, it's brought me a lot of comfort myself, a lot of comfort. And there are some days where I'm like, I literally been listening to it because I had been listening to it well before it was released. And so some days I'll think, I've been listening to this song for years. I want to hear something different this morning, or whatever it is, or this moment. And I might play something different. There's a group of women that I have learned about that I love. They're called Beautiful Chorus. I love their music. You know them?
Yes.
I love their music. And so sometimes they take the place of "I Am Light," and then I play "I Am Light" too. It always just wants to, it's for me. And so that song has meant a lot to me. And again, the music industry lens, um, it's never been a single. It never got promoted. It was never on the radio. The label never said, "We like this song," or anything like that. They don't care about it. They didn't care. It's a song that I pushed in the business sense. And so I ended up getting to sing it at the Grammy pre-show, which is, big room, big stage, big band. The whole thing is not on TV, but it has that Grammy vibe. And I got to sing "I Am Light" at the Grammy pre-show. And when I finished, the whole audience jumped up and gave me a standing ovation. And for me, that was like a great moment of affirmation that I needed, not because we all love standing ovations, which I do. And I have a history with the Grammys, which I do. So I loved all of that. but I loved that I could come from a place of being like, I'm not going to sing that, that's corny, to shh, write the song, listen, what is your spirit telling you, to that moment. And then I ended up meeting a lot of people out of that too, like a lot of the uh, Kundalini yoga community, like were there that day because some of their albums were nominated for world music projects and stuff, and they were reaching out to me. They wanted to talk because they were like, she's our sister. We want to meet her. So I met a lot of them. I met like a lot of world musicians, people who were in that room that day. So I Am Light just continues to help me grow and open a lot of doors and create good experiences. I open all of my performances with I Am Light. Sometimes I open and close them with I Am Light. And it's just become my favorite song. And I never would have thought I would write my own favorite song ever. That's not how I see myself. But I wrote my own favorite songs.
India, that's what we all need to be reminded of. I mean, I have that on repeat and on repeat, that song.
Oh, thank you.
It's what we were talking about earlier. It's you allowed yourself to be vulnerable and then you expressed your strength from that and look how that changed millions of people around the world and continues to, if we say up level, or continues to just keep you, again, if we talk about bioenergetics, rooted and expanding
Mm,
and expanding and expanding, but you're
mm-hmm,
very grounded, and that helps to keep nurturing and nourishing the truth of who you are.
mm-hmm. It helps to keep nurturing and nourishing the truth of who I am. That's right.
And I'm so curious. I know, you spoke in the beginning about something's birthing, and you can feel these new vibrations. I don't know what else to call them. It's like a rumbling. You feel this sort of rumbling that something's being birthed. Do you want to talk into what that feels like? Because it feels really big for me. And I know we've talked a little bit about going into using some sound healing and some bowls in your music. And what does that feel? What does it feel like? Where the rumbling's going, the vibrations taking you.
It feels like um, it feels like it's taking. hmm, It feels like it's releasing me from a single-minded focus on my music career, which I've been like I was a serious young person. So I've been like single-mindedly focused on my music and my music career for 20 years. And before that, people would tell me in college, because I went to a visual art school, I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and people would say stuff to me like, are you going to move to New York and be a professional singer? And we didn't have music at that school. I was studying to be an art history minor and a jewelry maker. I wanted to be a jewelry maker.
Oh,
And I would laugh. No, I'm not going to move to New York. What do you mean I'm going to move to New York? I was going to move to New York and be a singer. And people would say, you're lucky. You know what you want to do with your life. Stuff like that. And I was like, I do? So I was like 19, 20, and I was serious enough about music that it was in my energy still all the time.
India, it's cracking a little bit. Do you hear
It was
that?
my earring. It was my
Oh,
earring. I
okay,
took it
okay.
out. Um,
Your jewelry.
yeah, my jewelry started talking. Um,
Say, no, I'm not going to be a jeweler.
no, and I'm a jewelry connoisseur and collector to this day. But so I said all that to say that it's been a long time, longer than my career, that I've been single-mindedly focused and serious about the healing power of music and focus on my career. And I still want to make music, of course. Music is my love, my passion. I still want to make music, but I don't want to be single-mindedly focused on that part of myself because I'm also um, a writer and I would love to publish and teach. I would love to eventually teach in university things around music and spirituality. I would love to work behind the scenes because I know so much about people's bodies and angles of the face and makeup colors and how to dress people from a spiritual perspective. Like you can't tell anybody what to wear, but I've learned so much. Like I feel like I can tune into people and help people look their best in their way. Like, you know, my mother's my stylist and made all my clothes. I would love to have something to do behind the scenes where I help people express their energy visually, right? Because we were talking about Krishna Das with the hair extensions and the eyeliner. Like, to not do that to people, you know, like to help people, like, what is your style? Like, what is your soul? How does your soul want to look and express itself? I would love to do things around that, and even with jewelry and clothes and makeup and hair and helping people develop their images. And I also would love to, like you said, expand my spiritual practices to be more than just a self-healing practice. So that I would love to learn more about the scientific processes behind healing. Like you were talking about the Taurus, like I could just tune into you talk about that. Like you started talking and I wanted to tune into it. I'd love to know more about the science behind um, the human energy field, and how I can best serve people in that way through my voice, through the use of sound, through whatever else is ready to birth itself through me, any other healing modalities, and just be able to serve people um, in those other ways through writing and teaching and healing and helping, and maybe editing videos, maybe making videos, maybe directing. Or I just know, because these are not things that, all these things that I name are things that I do, that I would love to have a jewelry line. These are all things that I do. I just haven't given myself permission to expand outside of that box, because I felt like I just had to focus and work so hard for everything. And I don't think that I was wrong in that. It's been a journey that required a lot of focus and work. But my favorite quote that I've heard this year, I don't know what the book was from, but the quote is, "Even the greatest dreams reach their fruition." And so I feel like um, that music industry journey in the conventional way is just kind of over naturally. Not because I'm tired and I quit, or you guys made me mad and I quit, which I've done many times, but like it's naturally over, and not in that way of doing it is over. And so it made me really think about, well, what are all these things that you said you wanted to do? And I'm ready to do them. And after saying all that, I don't know. It just feels like I wanted to expand into myself, but I don't know.
I'm so glad you shared those things. I'd like to engage you right away to do a video with me.
That'll be interesting. Oh.
You know, I never thought it's like you have this structure in your life of everything you've done and all your experiences. And now
Yeah.
it's like if we have that bigger vision of ourselves where the dreams weren't like, you know, but the dreams are being birthed, they're being born now, they're incubating. Because sometimes I feel like what's happening for all of humanity now is something bigger than we could have even conceived. Like, I never dreamed about working with crystal singing bowls and sharing that science and that healing sound all over the world. That wasn't something I dreamed about. I loved music and I wanted to be singing first on Broadway and then on the opera stages. So that wasn't even
Mm.
it wasn't even a concept I had anywhere. And yet, as we ground more and more, I think, and as this whole energy is transforming all of us or allowing us to transform, there are so many possibilities we haven't thought about. And when you were sharing those things, I was imagining so many things that your wisdom of all the years and what you've been through, the authenticity, the vulnerability, the strength, what we've been talking about, how much that can serve humanity in a different way than being a top music artist, which is fantastic. I mean, that's incredible too. But I feel like for so many of us, it's this nurturing of the true soulful self, the true self, the one that whispered in our ear and said, mm-mm, not that.
Anymore, not that anymore. That's one of the things that I really identify with you, with the story of being a singer who was on stages and then being here now. I was going to say ending up here, but we don't know where any of us are going to end up. But being here now with the bowls, like I really um, am inspired by that, because you don't ever know how it's going to look, but you're not you don't feel to me to be in any way missing or lacking that other world. It feels like you enjoy this even more to me. And so it's like I'm inspired by that. I need to see examples of it, of what it could look like to go from the stage to using music as a real healing tool, real one-on-one work with people, small groups, hands-on. Like, I don't know a lot of people who have that journey, and I'm apparently about to embark on it myself, or something like it.
I mean, India,
So,
you know, you never dream that, you know, life goes the way it does. I never could have even imagined that I would lose my child at age 19, which would cause, you know, this whole journey where you say to yourself, I'm either going to say yes to the truth of what's inside me, or I'm going to stay bitter and I'm going to stay a victim and I'm going to stay, you know, in this small space, right? And it's like my son going, Mom, man, you know, we got work to do. And it's like, no, 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 you need to be here. It's like, Mom, we had a soul contract, and that soul contract is bigger than both you and I. And you know, when I'd bring him to bed when he was little, you know, we talk about I love you as big as God, and I love you as big as the universe, and in these big, big terms. And that was part of our intimate world, right? And it's like, my gosh, the joy that comes now, you know, it's a totally, as you know, I mean, when you're performing, as you said, you get the standing ovations and all that, but it's kind of based on outside approval and outside, and when that's taken away and you're one to one with each other and you're looking in somebody's eyes and they have cancer or they've gone through the death of someone they love or whatever it is, and you're working with them and you give your knowledge and your whole being, the love you are from music through that, India, there's nothing like that. It's, I mean, I look at my face sometimes and I go, there's just, it's, I am light. You said it. You wrote that. That's what it feels like inside. And, you know, all of it's good. It's just that humanity is being asked to step it up now. And sometimes I think if I had to let go of my son in this earthly life and not be able to watch him grow up, but therefore we get to do this and I get to have conversations with you and, you know, support people because of my musical knowledge, man, like that's bigger than we thought about, right? And
that's
when you were
right.
talking about what's next for you, I'm like, oh, yes, yes. Like I just imagine so many people, and as we've all come to see now through this whole Zoom period, what's possible. You can reach millions of people around the world just simply in conversation, right? That we couldn't do in a concert like that.
Yeah. I have to say this. Um, what you just said a moment ago about you have to decide whether you're going to do it or not. I That's really the experience I'm having. I mean, it started with the conversation late last year in the fall about um, the music industry and my tolerance for all of it and all that, everything we just talked about. It started with that. What it's turned into over these last 3 months is looking at how much the world is changing, looking at who I am and everything that forgive me for using these words, but this is how it feels, everything that I tried to offer towards the upliftment of humanity, because you're not going to be foreign to this philosophy I'm about to espouse. We were taught as young people that the world is humanity's on a slippery slope. We all use our talents in all ways to keep us from this dystopian future. You know, that's what we were taught. And also in the Black cultural communities, it was like, you know, our elders were like the Black Panthers and the people who were doing all the spiritual work, people who were traveling back to Africa for the first time after hundreds of years and relearning who our African roots. And that's who our elders were. Like, I'm from a Pan-African family, so that's who we were. And so they would also teach us, you know, you're our hope. There are these things that we want, we know you can do, which is the right thing to do. You have to instill confidence in your children. You can't say, hey, the world sucks. You're not going to be able to do any better than me. You can't say that either. And so in these last 3 years only, I'm realizing that a lot of what they said was an overstatement but they had to say it. But I went head on, serious, focused, no doubt in my mind that if I gave everything I had through my music to the upliftment of humanity, and that as long as the other people were doing it, we could do it. Literally, and it's been in the last year, this last year, since this time last year, that I've started to really awaken to a more truthful way of seeing that whole thing. And, you know, like Reverend Michael, when he was on set for the Welcome Home short film, I was talking to him about this. And he said, you know, he said, you have to look at it this way. There may have been things we have averted. And he also said, but also all of our prayers and our work has helped to lance the boil, were his words. And I want to believe that's true. But I also, because of where I am, I'm asking myself, what is true? I've been asking myself, what is truth? What is a belief? Like, it got that deep for me, because it was like, if I believed all of that, and to the point that like the sky is blue, I believed that we were going to be able to do this. Then it started making me really ask deep questions of myself and of God. Like, what is truth? What is a belief? And so where I am today is because of the current climate around race in particular. Where I am today is remembering especially who my grandmother was, my mom's mom. She was an activist. She worked in the government. My grandmother was born in 1933 in Alabama. Had 8 children by the time she was 27. Fled the South like a lot of Black people did. Moved up north. She had 2 children at that time. Then had the rest of her children up in Lansing, where my mother was raised. Like, we were talking about her being raised around Motown. And so when you think of a Black woman born in 1933, you can imagine what kind of education they didn't have and what kind of support they didn't have from the society they came from. And, you know, the story that a lot of people are now awakening to, the Black story. And so the Black American story in particular. And so that's who my grandmother was. And she taught herself everything she knew and learned how to maneuver inside the government, because her mother and she were sitting on her mother's porch, my great grandmother, who I never knew. They were sitting on her porch, and she told me this. I have it on tape, because I asked her to tell it again so I can get it on tape. She said that her mother said, she looked off into the distance and said, something is coming and it's going to last a long time and it's going to ravage our community. And it ended up being drugs, and the way that drugs hit the Black community. And so some of my grandmother's children were addicts, like some of my mother's brothers and sisters were. Some weren't, some were. And my grandmother, being a mother in the big sense, became a mother to the community. And so she taught herself how to maneuver the government to get government assistance for all the addicts and all the single mothers. And so it got to the point where one of my cousins went to the city offices one day and was trying to do something my grandmother needed. And the person behind the desk said, that's Ernestine McMullen's granddaughter. She's going to get it anyway. Just give it to her. Right? So she was like very powerful. And so it got to I feel like the height of her career. Who's to say what the height is? She did a lot for a lot of people, but my grandmother wanted to be an official drug abuse counselor. And so she didn't go to college. She just was like, I'm going to teach myself all this stuff and I'm going to take the college final exam. And that's what she did. And she ended up becoming a drug abuse counselor. And then she ended up running the whole office in her 70s. And so I said all that because a lot of us are telling our stories about what it means to be Black American these days. And it's important for me to tell mine, because I'm very proud of my heritage. I'm very, very proud of it. I'm also proud of my lineage. And so I've been thinking a lot about my grandmother and who she was and how hard she fought. And she had way less than I do. I am who I am because of the foundation that my foremothers laid and forefathers. But also, even specifically speaking about myself as a musician, my mother's whole family sang. My grandfather played blues piano and sang. He looked kind of like Sammy Davis Jr., like he had that look. He was a small guy with, you know, wavy hair, and he played piano a certain way, like it moved around a lot. He sang the blues and he sang in church. And my great grandmother was a evangelist, and her father was an evangelist. And And especially in the South, when you're a preacher or an evangelist of any sort, you're also a singer. It's just, they go together. And so I come from that lineage, which is why I speak and sing on stage. Like, I'm learning like why I am how I am. But when I think about my grandmother and all of her activism and all the ways that she showed her love to her community, it is now, I'm realizing, as I'm just turning a corner in my life, my own development. That's the word I was thinking of earlier, development. That I'm looking at myself and asking, what does it look like for me to do, to walk in that part of my lineage? Because the music was what I feel like it was what I was called to do. I feel like I did it the way I was called. My family is very proud of everything I accomplished. My grandmother would always say, "You're making the whole family proud." And it wasn't because I was famous, it was because I was dignified. You know, dignity is a public act. And she would always say, "You don't wear naked clothes. You don't do," you know, stuff like that. And so, but I feel like that phase is over. And so now I feel like life is asking me, now that everybody's ready to have conversations about the Black experience in America. I have plenty of stories to tell about that, plenty of ways I would love to teach people and share, plenty of time to hear, plenty of time to even talk about my Black experience in the music industry now that I don't have anything I need from it. Plenty of, and so I've been asking myself really how I walk in that part of my lineage. And so thank you, thank you. And so, as you know, to be transparent again, I postponed this interview from the first schedule we had because the quarantine was okay with me because I am truly like a contemplative person. I live a contemplative life. I'm cool with being quiet and alone and all that. But when the protest started, I got triggered in so many different ways because there's a lot of doors to go into, like everybody. That's why everybody has a story to tell. And the actor David Oyelowo, who played Martin Luther King in the Selma movie, he said something that got chills just thinking about it now. He said, "Every Black person has a wound around race." And it's true. That's why everybody's now like, "Me too. This is my story. That's why we're all having these stories to tell." And what I feel like now at this moment for me is, even inside of my music industry journey, I was always unapologetically celebrating of my Blackness, always. Not because I think anybody's better, but because I love me. If you listen to my music, you know that and I was asking my best friend last night, I said, "Do I ever talk like I think anybody's better than anybody else?" She was like, "No, that's not like your thing." And then I asked my mom and she was like, "No, it's not your thing." And so like my celebration of my Blackness always was because I love me, not because I don't love everybody else too. And so now that we're having these hard conversations, and I'm not going to go into too many doors, but I have to say this too. Um, there's always other layers to the Black experience. And so I'm a Black American. I'm also a Black American woman. So it creates a specific experience. And the other day, I found out something I never knew. So the activist Fannie Lou Hamer, I didn't know, and I don't mean to bring this heavy, but I just have to be honest. It was just day before yesterday. I found out that she was not only beaten in jail, but sexually assaulted in jail. Right? I didn't mean to hit you like that.
No, no.
But it made me have to lay down and take a nap because Black women in America have that to contend with along with racism too, right? And so Black men have other things. We see what Black men contend with. You have to be strong enough to be in the street and be docile when it's time when the police come. And like there's all this stuff and the ways we have to bend ourselves into shapes to fit into the society we're in and all the stuff. But when I think about my grandmother, my great grandmother, and the journey of a Black woman in America, that Fannie Lou Hamer, learning that about her really triggered me. And I don't take naps. Like I don't go to sleep in the middle of the day. I'm a worker. And I like to do things and read and get stuff done and, live the day. And I had to take a nap. And so when I think about the moment outside of what I thought I was offering, and I said, excuse those words earlier, because I don't know what I was doing. I was doing what I felt I was to do. Outside of what I thought I was offering through my music and what I thought my music was going to be able to do or be a part of in this world, putting that aside now and thinking two questions. How can I do this with more joy? Because otherwise, what did all my ancestors do this for? And two, how can I be of the highest service to humanity at this point? really asking myself those questions, really asking, really asking. And I look to my lineage because I'm very connected to my ancestry. I've said it 3 times in like the last 5 minutes, and I really am. And so I look there first because I feel like they're always talking to me, like, hear your son. I hear my grandmothers, I hear them. And so I've just been now asking myself, am I going to do it or not? Am I going to speak up or not? Am I going to tell the hard stories or not? Am I going to be willing to cry on camera while I tell people things I know about my family or not? Am I going to be able to say the hard stuff or not? Am I going to be able to say stuff that people might not like me for or not? Am I going to be able to say things that people will say, we're not playing her music anymore or whatever? Am I willing to say those things or not? That hasn't happened to me, but it could because I don't have anything stopping me anymore. And so I am, I didn't want to not talk about matters of race in this conversation. I didn't know I was going to get that heavy with it, but I also have to talk about it because that has everything to do with where I feel I'm going next. Not issues of race, but issues of being more transparent and whatever I have to offer around issues of race. And so, because really, in my naivete, I thought I'm making music because I want to help bring about peace on earth. And I still believe that, but we have so many steps between that. And I was really blessed to be naive enough to believe we didn't have that many steps. And so now that I'm having this rude awakening and my rose colored glasses are finally off at this age, I'm like, thank you for letting me be naive that long. It was nice. But now that my rose colored glasses are really, really off, and I know the whole story about how my grandfather fled Memphis and what happened, how they tried to kill him. I know the whole story. They told us this when we were young. So it wasn't like I didn't understand. I still had a certain belief in what humanity was capable of. And so I've been heartbroken this last month or two, like really that heartbreak of disappointment. Like looking at who we really are right now at this moment is heartbreaking. And so I've been mending my own heart and seeing how I can help mend other people's in all ways. So that's why this is happening on our second scheduled moment, because I need to take a nap the other time.
No,
But
you,
also I'm happy it's happening now because I have words around my feelings.
it's such deep gratitude because also I'm not sure sometimes how to speak into it. I know how deeply I feel, and also there's been days where I have to just lay down, and I'm not a napper in the day either because the pain of the broken heart is so it's so big. I mean, two things. I remember when I was living in Germany, and we do have Jewish roots. My dad was Jewish. My mom's dad was Jewish. You know, just also like feeling, living and feeling in that whole energy of what that was, and trying to understand how can humanity be so cruel to humanity? And what you described about your grandmother, she was she was being love.
Yeah,
She was not doing, of course she was doing, but what you described, I kept feeling here's this, again, this incredibly grounded spirit that is being the love
yeah.
and changing a whole community, which then, of course, changes the world.
You know, she was on the local paper. She was on the Lansing, Michigan newspaper on the cover when she passed away. I was like, that's how people naturally felt by what she was being.
You know, India, this is also the gift of music. And as I created this series again this year, and Dylan was like, "Mom, you know, we're gonna do 2020." He said in December, and you know, the plan was always to go up in June, and then it started June 1st, the day that everything just broke loose, all hell broke loose, and it was like, wow,
Mm,
what timing is this? You know, and
mm,
we want to be that stability, that loving presence,
yeah,
the
we
light.
do. Yeah, we do.
And I feel like it's so important. Music holds the space. There's music, there's rests. There's music, there's silence, right? And that creates this whole shape. And it's so important now that we listen, that we listen. And I'm so moved. I didn't know that, your story like that. So I'm,
Oh, that's a small piece. That's a small
yeah,
piece of my story. But
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
I'm so touched. Oof.
Thank you.
Could I ask you, and could I ask you to close us out with any sort of vibrational thing you'd like to do, whether it's a songversation or
Mhm.
something vocal or something that, because it feels like it's for us to knit, to knit something of beauty now with everything that's coming open. Forgive
Let's
me
see what wants to come out.
if my words are awkward. I apologize. Oh, it's very, very big.
Hmm. Uh, I say this affirmation for myself and for everyone listening. Hmm. In a world that is cynical, may we know that we are light. May we know that there is light. And may we know that we can always find the light. Hmm. Hmm. In the
Mm-hmm.
words of one of my favorite prayers, and all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Amen and Ashe.
Dearest India, thank you.
Thank you for this sacred space. Mm-hmm.
There's a sacredness in the science of all we're talking about, and there's a sacredness in the sound, sacredness in the space. We are blessed. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
so much for
Thank you so much.
your time and your authenticity.